Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1162. Casual Flex. Round after round of food was brought to them as the other guests socialized. Everyone took a moment to give Carl and Dana envious glances for their spots of honor with the two most powerful beings in the room, and many had realized that they were members of the Supreme Ladies Guild. That was a curiosity that they couldn't ignore. But very few were brave enough to go to their table and socialize. They would wait for Carl and Dana to join the crowd. Will all the contestants for the fashion show please unequip any worn items they wish others to see the bonuses on and come to the front of the stage? The host announced. That's our signal. Supreme Lady Immortal Regent, it has been a pleasure. Carl announced. Oh, we will be here waiting for you when you finish. We have much to discuss tonight, and Azov gives himself an ulcer every time that I come to visit. Matilda replied with a smirk. Carl unequipped all his items but left them on. If the guests wanted to see anything that he was wearing, they could. After all, Ray had more of it for sale. The cat demon and the divine fox walking hand in hand to the stage drew not only attention but the spotlights so that everyone could take a better look at them as they approached. Everyone please give a warm welcome to Carl and Dana of the Darklight Host, the first contestants for our fashion show this evening. All of their fashion was made in-house by the Darklight Host's artisans, and I see over a dozen totem-ranked totem-grade items on display between them, all with tailored combat abilities, none of it randomized. The announcer declared. Then the excited voice of a second announcer took over. If you look at the dress on Lady Dana, it has been custom-tailored by Ray Bloodbath of the Darklight Host and finished with runecrafting by Lord Carl. The fabric is totem-ranked demonic spider silk, and the thickness of the weave has been altered to go from gossamer to full coverage without any sewn seams. There are flecks of mythic rank elemental crystals reflecting the light, and they have been integrated into the mana storage spell on the garment. Truly wonderful work. Carl smiled as Dana's ears twitched the fox version of a blush at the praise for her outfit, and the crowd began to cheer. Lord Carl is in a suit by the same designer, also made of seamless silk, but his has been enhanced with runecrafting to include both percentage-based and flat bonuses to damage reduction. Truly a fashionable armor piece with self-mending bonuses on it should it be damaged. Of particular note is his tie clip, which has a totem-ranked holy stone bearing the consecrated ground spell. There were a few appreciative gasps and then more cheering as Carl and Dana reached the stage. But the contest wasn't entirely about the bonuses on the items, it was about fashionability, and that was entirely subjective. A fact that Ray was rapidly discovering in the best of ways as she paraded Nilla around the wine tasting. It was mostly populated with vampires and other nocturnal species who had dragged themselves out for the big day. And they loved her style. However, most of them were keenly aware that the demonic spider was an apex predator, and that wrapping themselves in her fashion might be misinterpreted by Ray as some sort of higher claim on them. That probably wouldn't stop most of them from buying clothing from her later, but in an enclosed underground space the possible downsides of the issue were a bit more prominent. Especially when she kept vanishing every time she forgot that she was supposed to be visible to talk to people. She wasn't actually becoming invisible, but with her adaptive coloration and in a dark wine cellar her black outfit just naturally blended with the background. Those like Nilla who had thermal vision thought that it was a wonderful trick, but those who relied on regular optical vision were mostly just mildly terrified. Which was the greatest compliment that they could have paid her. At the restaurant all around Carl and Dana, the stage was rapidly filling with both the models and the crafters who had sponsored them for the evening. There were no poor designs, only the peak of functional fashion. But that didn't mean that there were no standout entrants. On the male side, one particularly flashy dragonkin was getting the majority of attention for his scale-patterned suit that had been made from a monstrous serpent found in one of the mythic dungeons. But on the female side, the resentment was building as the others realized that not only the dress but the effortless grace of a divine fox had put Dana head and shoulders above the other contestants. Carl and Dana didn't know because they were invited by Azov and Matilda, but there was a substantial prize for the winner as well as the prestige and networking opportunities that would come from it. Some of these designers were crafting guild leaders from other nations, and getting to know each other was the real benefit to this event. Men, please step forward, and with a show of placards we will determine the winner of the men's fashion contest. The host announced. Each of our contestants has a number on the stage by their feet. Please write the number on your placard and either raise it or show it to the staff to cast your vote. The host explained. The voting was short, but men's fashion was the sideshow today. There were only so many ways that you could do a suit, and there weren't really any other high-fashion outfits for them that didn't come across as a cosplay in a formal setting like this. If the contest were for armor not formal, where the men would be the much larger feature, even if the ladies' armor was still more fashionable. Chapter 1163, Sales Pitch. It didn't take long before the staff had a decision for the male fashion portion of the show. In a resounding victory, we have Gathak wearing the obliteration python scale fashion of the Amitba Group's master craftsman. The announcer declared. Carl clapped along with the others as the man in the snake scale suit bowed and waved to the crowd. That was their cue to retreat from the stage and leave the rest of the show to the ladies. Lord Carl, wonderful showing today. I must say, simply exquisite work on behalf of your guild. Tell me what branch is best to request custom work. One of the mythic mages in the audience asked. The Alliance House here in Xylaz is the practical option, but if you happen to be in Drod, we do have a storefront in our guild house there, and they can take all your measurements and custom stat or skill bonus requests. Carl explained. What about the Darklight host's third location? One of the other mages at the table asked. The Supreme Lady has chosen not to involve herself with the drudgery of crafting, but any of the members there could certainly pass along your request to the other locations. We split our staff based on their preference of residence, so the item may be made in sections depending on the request. Carl explained. I see that mana storage is one of the buffs on Lady Dana's dress. Is that an intentional buff, one that you can replicate? The mage asked, his draconic eyes flashing silver with excitement. Carl took a small mana jade statue out of his inventory and placed it on the table for examination. That is a monarch-ranked mana storage statue. The affordable option for daily use. We stock them in royal and commander rank as well because they are so popular with warrior-class cleaning staff who have limited mana of their own. Carl explained. The mages gave each other panicked looks, then stared at the statue again. You have cornered a market that we didn't even know existed. One of them joked. Carl smiled and took out a pair of functional rings, one with a cleaning spell on it, and another with an enchantment to fold laundry. There are many things that can be done with the appropriate application of runecrafting, and not all of them are combat-related. He agreed. The guests at nearby tables were all admiring the craftsmanship on the simple wooden rings and calculating how much time and effort that would save around their own guild houses. If they could have everything magically cleaned every day, it would change the entire vibe of many of their guild houses, which more closely resembled frat houses than any sort of dignified noble estate. Hiring domestic staff was expensive in Xylaz. But if they could get a magical item designed for cleaning, they could assign a few of the junior members to the duty and actually expect it to get done. The mage slid a handful of mythic rank nature and arcane gems across the table toward Carl, who graciously nodded in acceptance and let him have the 3 items on the table. If you need more like those, we have them in stock at the Drod Guild House. It's open to the public and much easier to access than the Alliance House that we operate out of here in Xylaz. Carl explained. The mages smiled. It might take multiple hops for them to get to Drod, but they could all use the portal spell. They could make money reselling these once their alliance had enough. Carl socialized with a few more groups of well-wishers, then rejoined the table with the Immortal Regent and Matilda. Good showing. But I think that you'll get the most important category. Azov greeted him. Carl nodded. Some of the other dresses are nice, but I can already see that the one Dana is wearing is getting an extreme level of attention, and not just for the enchantments. Ray's fashion really is the perfect blend of form and function. The announcer cleared his throat. Ladies, can you line up to take a walk down the stage and back? Let everyone get a good look at the fashions you are modeling today? The host requested. That somehow left Dana at the back of the line, as she never tried to push to the front like the others did. But it would work out perfectly, Carl thought. One by one, the ladies strutted down the stage, showing off for the crowd. Many notes were made, and Carl realized that the crowd actually took judging very seriously. They were not just leaders of powerful alliances, but some national leaders and other very wealthy investors who had a vested interest either in fashion or in equipment crafting. Carl could hear his own name mentioned from dozens of tables around the room, so even though she wasn't crossing the stage, Dana still held many people's attention. Then, as the last of the contestants crossed the stage and joined the group, she stepped out from the shadows, letting the spotlight sparkle off the embedded gem flakes in the dress, and her fluffy foxtail swish behind her. Carl couldn't help but smirk at the way that half the room's heads moved in time with the swaying of her hips. Fox Charm was a simply overpowered passive ability, and the Dana Mage was all his. She got to the middle of the stage and gave the crowd a twirl, letting them see all the features of the dress, and the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. The announcer let them go for half a minute as Dana did her best not to fidget under their scrutiny and continue waving at the guests. Thank you, ladies. Miss Dana, please take your spot and we will begin the voting on the first category. Esteemed guests, in the category of functional enchantments on accessories, please cast your votes. Just a reminder that the People's Choice winner and the higher judges' rankings may not match. And now Carl knew why everyone was making notes. Chapter 1164. Pageant Queen. But he had enough practice making items to assess them at a glance, and he quickly realized that as far as practical function, none even came close to Dana's. They even had mending and self-cleaning charms on them just because he had some room to show off. Azov chuckled as Carl came to the same realization that everyone else did. Run crafting was simply overpowered. The other items weren't even close, though there were many totem and mythic ranked epic grade items being worn. If there was a category for pure combat power enhancement, Dana might lose. But even against mythic equipment, she wouldn't be losing by too much with the targeted bonuses Carl could add. The staff came and collected the results, then the announcer came back on stage. Next we have a more subjective award. Practical fashion. It's easy to add combat bonuses to accessories. But can high fashion be something that you would wear more than once? He asked. The ladies in the crowd laughed. High fashion wasn't intended to be worn more than once. They knew what he meant. If there were multiple events during the day like today, would you be able to wear the same dress all day and be comfortable not only on stage but also in the street and at dinner? Some of these dresses were only chosen for the stage, to the point they had even changed before the presentation or had remained standing for the entire event so the dress wasn't wrinkled. Ladies, make yourself comfortable. This might take a few minutes, the host declared. Naturally, this was part of the judging and an excuse for Dana to show off the Darklight host skills. She took out a large elven steel loop and hook from the guild inventory, and the others were immediately baffled. Then she hung one of Ray's hammock chairs from it and elegantly reclined, slowly crossing her legs, then fluffing her tail through the back so she could swing comfortably. The hammock chair hook was made by Ashbringer for just this reason, with a single upright, so that the species with wings could lounge without them getting caught on anything or pressed into their backs. Even the host was shocked by her actions. When he said get comfortable, he had meant that they didn't need to be so stiff, but few would dare to actually lounge in a chair like that for fear of damaging their dress. There was one other eager crafter among the ladies on stage, though. She was circling Dana's chair, trying to understand how it hung just right. The weave is stretchy and weight sensitive. Would you like to try? Dana asked. The blue dragon girl nodded eagerly, and they switched spots. Dana's dress shook out perfectly as she stood, and the blue dragon sighed happily as she reclined into the chair. Then she crossed her legs underneath her, tucking her skirts like a young child would, and a few members of the crowd chuckled. She was definitely making herself more comfortable than the host had intended. In fact, she had completely forgotten that they were judging anything, and she took out a book to read while they waited. A mythic ranked man behind Azov chuckled. That counts as a technical knockout for the Darklight host, doesn't it? She's completely lost, and they'll have to pry her out of the chair to get her back in the competition. Carl shook his head. It's fine. Dana knows the trick to dealing with juvenile dragons. You just need to get them to focus on something else and they'll snap right out of it. I think that we can let her keep the chair as well, so she can study it later. The judging ended and Dana poked the dragon on the nose, getting her attention. Time to stand and show off your dress. You can keep the chair and stand. We've got more, she whispered. All right, thank you. The dragon pressed an item into Dana's palm, and she tossed it in her inventory to check later. It was better not to haggle prices here, as they weren't selling anything valuable. Well, not excessively valuable, as the stand was elven steel but not enchanted or elaborately engraved. Now for the category that everyone has been waiting for. The combined voting. Form, function, and fashion. Who wears it best? Please cast your votes, the host declared. The ladies posed and turned to show off the features of their outfits, giving everyone time to make their final decisions if they hadn't already picked their favorite. That was an easy choice for Carl. It wasn't like he was going to vote against himself. Well, against Dana, but she would surely hold it against him if he did. Again, the results were collected and then a list was handed to the host. It looks like we've got a clear winner today. In the practical function and practical fashion categories, as well as the judge scoring for the combined voting, we have Dana of the Darklight host as the winner by majority vote. Dana waved at the crowd and the host handed her a huge bundle of flowers as well as a small trophy. Matilda snapped her fingers and a magical painting appeared in the air beside her, nearly as real as a photograph. Wonderful showing. Yes, this is a good outcome, the Supreme Lady decided. Dana returned to the table with her prizes and Matilda gave her a crushing hug from behind so that she didn't squish the flowers. Sit. Now we get to see the interesting part, she explained. The announcer cleared his throat. Today we have a runoff for fan choice. Diana of the Buterum Alliance and Narcissa of the Godcrushers have an identical number of fan votes, tying them for the lead in the Fan Choice Award, with Miss Dana having come in a close third. The ladies will now have the chance to compete to gain the approval of the crowd one final time. Matilda's smile told Carl all he needed to know. This was not about posing on stage. Chapter 1165. Competing Auras. As soon as he finished speaking, two competing auras clashed on stage, and the guests cheered even as they erected barriers over their tables to prevent damage to the weaker members of their parties. But it was just a crude contest to attempt to suppress the other's aura so that they could shine. Carl was sure that he could do far better. Still, it was good entertainment as the two ladies kept the perfect political smiles on their faces as they battled for dominance. They weren't hostile auras, they were carefully calculated to be friendly and welcoming, but at mythic rank they were still far too intense for most of the spectators to handle. Finally, one of the contestants rubbed her temples and retreated from the stage, leaving the other to bow to the crowd and collect the prize. That marked the end of the contest, but it was far from the end of the night's festivities. Plates of dessert treats were brought to the tables along with fresh drinks, and the stage was set up for some sort of dance show that involved a trapeze. That was a new one to Carl, but everyone else seemed excited about the spectacle, so it must be more than just an obscure side act. Please welcome the dancers of the Goddess of Life and Rebirth Temple. The announcer declared right before a slender beastkin man made a running leap from the trapeze platform to catch the hanging rope and swing to the other side, where three others hopped on and rode it to the various hanging curtains. Slow sensual music was put on and the dancers began to twirl and spin in the air, showing off not only an incredible level of strength but agility and perfect timing as well. This should have words. Dana realized a few minutes into the show. Azov chuckled. It's actually a historical play set to music. The chase and mating of the first bunny saintess. See how they weave between the curtains? It originally showed how the pursuit ran through the long grass. His whispered voice barely carried across the table, but Dana nodded. Now it made more sense. It had just been adapted for a wider audience so that they could get crowds to watch the stories of their goddess even if they didn't all know what the show was. The music changed to something close to the industrial dance music of the Golden Dragon Nation, and the show changed along with it, bringing in more dancers and what looked like a dramatized battle scene with extra flying beastkin. The show ended with two of the dancers sliding down entwined silk sheets to land on a pile of pillows on the stage, and then a dramatic curtain drop followed by thunderous applause from the crowd. Once the show was finished, the guests slowly began to make their way out of the restaurant, but Matilda motioned for Carl and Dana to wait. They were soon alone in the formerly packed venue, and Carl heard the staff locking the doors. Perfect, now we can discuss important things. Like the wedding cake, Matilda declared. Carl smiled while Dana rolled her eyes, becoming used to the dragon's antics after spending so much time wedding planning with her. They already knew the cake flavor and design. Azov cleared his throat. No, that's not what we were planning to talk about after the crowd left. We need to discuss this plan that you have with the blue dragons to start randomly changing people's class assignments. Now, I know that the situation with the warriors isn't normal and that every class should be able to advance as they increase in rank. That's not the issue. What I wanted to ask is if you would be interested in a little vacation to a region with the opposite issue. They have received a great diversity of classes, but the only system activations have been from those who left the area. Not a single new class activation has occurred on the Nia continent during this resurgence. The mana level is high enough there that they should be keeping up with us here in the Dragon Isles, but for some reason nobody is getting a class at all. Carl smiled and Dana gave him a poke in the arm to remind him that she had no idea about the Nia continent or why Carl would know of it. It's where Bishop Misty sent me into the past to find Kara. It was a chaotic place even then, so I can only imagine what it's like now. Carl explained. Azov shrugged. Primitive mostly. The barbarian tribes and elves control most of the continent. Unlike the other continents, the species didn't really segregate except by terrain. So you'll find most species in the barbarian tribes and any of the forest folk with the elves. They also have feral dragons which need to be dealt with. Some of them are fugitive criminals from other continents, most are just juveniles who didn't like the idea of living a civilized and disciplined life. Dana frowned. You're saying that there might be wild dragons flying around burning villages because they're bored or annoyed? Not might. There are, we know that for sure. Azov clarified. But we just couldn't be bothered to deal with it ourselves. Matilda added. Well, I'm sure that the ladies would love to have a new place to explore. Carl agreed. Matilda shook her head. No, it's better if it's just the two of you. Think of it like an advance honeymoon. If you take the others, the future gets all wonky. It's unstable enough just sending Kara with you, but someone needs to keep an eye on your antics. Dana made a squeaking laugh as her eyes filled with amused tears and she choked on her drink. Did you just say that Kara would be supervising us? Not the other way around. She stammered. Matilda nodded. There might be interference from other planes or mortal realms that is disrupting the natural flow of the continent's mana and system activations. If my suspicion is correct, Kara is the one best suited to dealing with it. Chapter 1166. Who goes? Dana frowned as she seriously contemplated a reality in which Kara might be the responsible member of the party. In the Chaos Plane all things were possible, but this one still seemed a bit far-fetched in their own reality. Azov sighed. It would also be best if you had the majority of the beasts remain on this continent. If the Darklight host suddenly stops producing goods, my poor secretary will never hear the end of it from your alliance. Carl smirked and patted the immortal on the shoulder. I don't think that will be an issue. We can open a portal to transfer goods back to the store, and I have a separate space for them to work in. Matilda shook her head. The guild functions aren't online there yet. You won't be able to access them without returning even if you open a portal. It's the same thing in Captumia. I can't even send a message to Orthos. I have to use messengers, and he should have a guild branch house coming online soon. But if you have one of your beasts left behind, they might be able to send you a mental message. I don't know the limits on distance or what restrictions you might hit. Dana cleared her throat. You are forgetting one crucial fact. Even if you call this an early honeymoon, I still have a wedding coming up, and I am not about to miss my own wedding no matter how important the mission is. Matilda smiled and patted her on the head, rubbing the fluffy fox ears. Don't worry. I have set an alarm. 1 week before the wedding I will pick you both up so that you have time to prepare. Then you can finish the mission after you are married if it still needs guidance. With the strangeness of that continent, I can't be sure. But I feel like this is going to be a relatively straightforward issue. She explained. And I feel like those words are a massive red flag for things going wrong. Dana countered. You worry too much. Carl has a calendar as well. He can bring you both back on time if you don't trust my schedule. Matilda pouted. Dana smiled at the dejected dragon. It's not that I don't trust your schedule, it's that I don't trust the situation to be anything resembling a vacation or even an easily solved problem. If the system is being totally suppressed there, it must be for a reason. Do you remember what the undead were up to this year? That was also an attempt to suppress the system and keep it from changing the balance of power. Matilda's frown turned to a smile. See, such a ridiculous notion. Utter chaos. Who would even think that would work? That's why I thought that this would be the perfect trip. In Carl's mind, Kara laughed. The problem wasn't the mission, it was that both ladies had very different views on what a fun and relaxing vacation was. Matilda just thought that Dana would enjoy some chaos more than Dana thought she would. Kara was more interested in whether she would get a good chance to try out the Elemental's Wrath spell. They had been too busy to go on more dungeon runs, and she needed to know how it worked. What did Berserk feel like? Could a badger even go berserk? What kind of transformation would she get? These were all important questions she didn't know the answer to. Carl ignored the train of thought that was sure to lead Kara into trouble and asked Azov about the important parts. Do you think that it would be too dangerous to leave Thoray and Remy here? If someone needs powerful custom items, they can ask Lady Sapphire. She's fully trained and capable, plus her grasp of language is so much better than mine that she's likely to come up with even more interesting items. Carl asked. That should keep all the departments of the Darklight host stocked with what they need. I know that the Blue Dragons are assembling a group to expand the skill library using your Drod Guild house as a base, but they're unlikely to reach a consensus on who gets to go before the wedding. The last I heard, they had over 10,000 volunteers, not counting the ones who were currently assigned to other projects. Azov agreed. Carl hadn't considered that. The Blue Dragons wouldn't struggle for volunteers to write new skill books. They would struggle to house everyone who wanted a chance to write new skill books, especially if they were ones that they could use. Though they might end up creating a whole new imbalance with their tests. If they were left up to their own devices, there might not be another royal or monarch-ranked warrior left in Drod by the time that they had all the data they wanted. Ray weighed the options. There were plenty of workers for her cloth now. She could give them a month's supply and come along with Carl. The cloth was the base for upgraded items, but that was mostly up to the runecrafting team. So she could take a month off to adventure. But there were so many people to decorate here, and she already had a small lake of blood waiting for her. Self-care was important. It was a dilemma. I won't stop you if you want to come along. Carl agreed. Can we really trust the Carl to the children and Hawk? Ray asked nobody in particular. Hawk screeched in annoyance while Remy laughed. Sister Kara will be with us too. Tian added helpfully. Kara laughed at Ray's mental doubt response. At least our little brother still has faith in the power of family. Don't worry, big sister. I will take good care of the Dana Mage. Ray gave a mental sigh. I will let you go without me. I've already got commissions to decorate 3 whole vampire covens and 2 mythic raiding teams. I can't leave that up to a subordinate. But I am warning you now, if the totems come to ask, I am definitely going to the dungeon with them, so that my kill count doesn't drop behind. Kara and Hawk nodded in agreement. It wasn't a contest if one of the competitors was throwing the game. Chapter 1167. Road Trip Pre-Honeymoon. As the beasts finished their argument about who should go, Azov was preparing to finish his drink and head out to meet with more dignitaries. When do we need to leave? Dana asked. Well, you've got everyone you need here with you now, so I will just open a portal from the table. Don't worry, Carl should know where you are when you arrive. Matilda explained. Then they were falling through the air. Hawk laughed as he came out of his space, and even Kara came out to play as Carl transformed into the World Dragon avatar and Dana used cloud dancing, one of her newer movement skills to fly. Carl flew under her and Dana settled between his shoulders as Carl circled to get his bearings and see if there was anything here that might give him some idea where Matilda had put them or why they had started thousands of meters in the air. They were over the ocean, he realized. Then Carl saw the small port city with the naval fleet guarding the bay. It wasn't a big city, perhaps 15 or 20,000 people. but big enough given the primitive level of society that he could see. The mana here was incredibly dense, but Carl only sensed the most basic of magic from the city despite seeing multiple species that should be able to use some level of magic innately. I am going to scout. Hawk announced, then activated Lord of Destruction as the ethereal form increased his speed. After a few minutes of lazy circling, Kara landed on Carl's back and he decided they had surveyed long enough. Hawk would bring back more reports in a few minutes and there was a city beneath them where they could ask questions. Land outside the city. Remember what Matilda said about feral dragons? Dana reminded him as Carl headed for shore. Carl nodded and circled down to land a kilometer outside the city limits before transforming back into beast form, his customary cat demon appearance. Dana returned to human just in case there were issues with her being a fox here as well, and Kara returned to her space. She was sure that this reception needed popcorn. Or it was about to. Carl and Dana walked to the gates of the wooden-walled port city, where a pair of guards with spears and terrified faces blocked their way. Only the mightiest of warriors might enter Capture Clan's fortress. The guard insisted. Carl frowned and then activated his rarely useful, dominating power, and used it to drive every guard at the gate to their knees before him. Dominating power, the Packmaster's aura gains a mental domination effect at will, requiring weaker minds to submit to his will. Hypnosis-type ability. Now that's a properly respectful way to greet guests. I had worried that I might encounter someone without manners. He informed them with a feline smile. Rapid hoofsteps on stone roads marked the approach of an overlord-ranked wrath demon holding an axe in each hand. Who is bullying my guards? He demanded. They're just being polite. Don't take it too much to heart. Carl joked. A puny man like you? The demon demanded. Would you like me to be less puny? My size is merely a preference. Carl replied. The demon swung an axe overhand, flashing in the afternoon sun. Right into Carl's grasping hand. A flex of his fingers shattered the ascended rank steel, and the demon was left staring at Carl in confusion. You're not going to be able to injure me that way. Forget cutting my skin, you couldn't trim my fur with that blade. Now my wife and I have just arrived on the continent, and I wish to know what city we're in and what cities are nearby. Carl explained. The demon frowned. The axe wasn't a mighty weapon and he could do better with his claws. But this cat demon was impressive. You are at the port of Capture, home of the Capture Clan's trade fleet. The road you landed beside leads east to Bunga, 2 days for soldiers on foot. The wrath demon reluctantly explained. Oh, wonderful, we're right on course. You'll enjoy this trip, Dana. My first successful duel was for the title of City Lord of Bunga, but that was quite some time ago now. I wonder how my successors have done? Carl laughed. The wrath demon's face lit up with joy when Carl said that. You were once Lord of Bunga? We should spar. That would be good. I need to see the difference between myself and a big city lord. He insisted. Carl frowned. I am much more powerful than I was then. Dragons grow over time and it has been a long time. But if you want to spar, we can. You gave me good news, it's the least I could do for you. Dana sighed. Especially not one that was still at the overlord rank. The unfortunate demon wouldn't even be able to harm Carl. Carl activated brutality, which made the two of them roughly the same size, though Carl was still more slender in build. Then he changed to a pair of loose pants for easier movement and nodded to the confused demon. How did you do that? He asked. Magic, of course. Don't worry about it for now. Spar first, learn later. Carl replied. That was solid logic in the mind of a wrath demon, and the town lord dropped his axe to charge at Carl barehanded. He threw a brutal punch which Carl casually caught and then used as leverage to toss the demon away and flip him on his back. The city lord flared his wings and landed on his feet, then charged again using short, fast jabs now that he knew he couldn't overpower Carl with raw strength. Carl let him go for a few minutes, remaining on the defense. Then he counterattacked, landing a single hard blow in the middle of the demon's chest that shattered bone and sent him skidding across the sandy ground. The wrath demon spit blood as he got back to his feet. No wonder you became a city lord. You have power in your fists. The wrath demon commended. Carl smiled. Thank you. Let me heal that injury and we can talk about what I truly came here for. Chapter 1168. Port Capture. Carl used Healing Splash to heal the demon and wash the sand off him at the same time. They're all better. It saves us the time of waiting for you to regenerate. Now I've got a question for you that will certainly seem odd if you're not a fan of history. What do you know of the system? Carl asked. The big demon frowned as he ran his hand over his freshly healed chest. The system? The legend of the ancient divine power that would let anyone who gained its favor ascend beyond their species' limits? It is said that even your foxkin bride could ascend to immortality if she had access to the system. Well, she would have a chance. The gods are not so simple to please, and there would surely have been trials and tribulations to gain that much power even with the system. Carl nodded. Well, at least it isn't completely forgotten. But the system has started to awaken again on the other continents, and we came here to determine why it won't awaken here. The demon frowned. Perhaps we have the favor of the demon gods. They know that prey is prey and scum are scum that belong beneath the powerful. What self-respecting demon god would encourage a way for succubi and satyrs to get notions of rising above their station? Carl nodded. That is a possibility. But we have heard that the elves and the other species are having the same issue, and the other continents don't want to risk the chance that it's a curse of some sort that might spread. The demon nodded in understanding. We don't do any trade with the other continents, but some of the other clans have bigger and better boats, so they do. If they spread a curse that weakened their trade partners, it could mean a disaster for everyone. Is there anything that we can do to help you with your research? Is there a reward for proving that it's not contagious? Carl chuckled at the last part. Yes, there is indeed a reward for the one who can gain access to the system and prove that it's not a contagious disease. It may not be easy, but if there is an inn where we can spend the night, I will run a few tests tomorrow morning to see if anyone has the gift. The Wrath Demon nodded. Of course. This is a port town, we've got not just one but two inns here. Not all clans welcome visitors, but we do. It's good for business. Carl saw that the residents were trying to size him up as he entered, unable to effectively guess his power level, as most of them were only ascended and commander rank. He briefly considered letting his aura loose, but that would just be cruel to the people, even if the city lord or clan leader, whatever title the Wrath Demon preferred, wasn't trying to hide his own. Here is the inn. Just ask the innkeeper and they'll have one of the servants get you anything that you need. The innkeeper, a magic demon whose feathers were the same blues and whites as the ocean near the shore, nodded eagerly. Yes, Lord Capture. I will take good care of your guests. Is there anything that you need right away? He asked. A room with a desk for writing. Preferably enough room for us both to work. Then you can have someone bring up food and drink in an hour. You're from the magic demon lineage and fairly well respected in town, it seems. So we may call on you to assist with our research later. Carl replied. The innkeeper was confused but nodded. The best way to deal with powerful people was to nod agree and hope that they didn't get bored and kill you anyhow. But these strangers were very flashy and clean, not even trying to hide their wealth and privilege. Could they be so powerful that they didn't need to? Even the dragons dulled their scales when they walked on another clan's territory. Carl hadn't thought about the state of the local villages when he had arrived. He was still shirtless after the fight, and Dana had changed to simple layered martial artist's robes, ones that were easy to fight in if she needed to. She had also transformed back into fox form once she realized that her human form was seen as a lesser species by the locals. But compared to the locals, they were still incredibly overdressed. Carl sent out a thought toward the beasts and found that the thoughts of Ray, Thor, and Remy were so faint that he had trouble hearing them, but the link didn't feel any weaker, just muffled by distance. He could still tell exactly where they were if he wanted to open a portal at their location. Next was the function test. Tessa, can you receive messages from us while we are on this continent? He asked. The message is distorted. Letters keep flickering like it's trying to decrypt them. Tessa replied, and Carl immediately saw what she meant. The message was readable, but random letters kept changing. I will continue to send messages when we can. Thor can fill you in on the details if he hasn't already. Carl couldn't see Thor keeping secrets from Tessa. Or from anyone really. If they asked, he would get too excited about the chance to be helpful and just tell them. We should write a few skill books and see if the locals can use them. That's the most surefire way to awaken the system, but if it's being suppressed here, there is no telling what might happen. Carl explained. So first we find out if it is possible for people from the continent to awaken the system, and then we work on finding out what is causing the delay. All in the next month? Dana confirmed. In the next 2 weeks preferably. Because I am looking forward to just taking you to bed for a week and not leaving. Then Matilda is going to pick us up a few days before the wedding so that we can get ready. Carl agreed. Chapter 1169. Book Choice. Dana smirked at Carl as she took out supplies to write a skill book. What spells should we even start with? She asked, pen poised. Well, as the town we've seen so far was mostly demons with only a few others, the obvious choices would be Fireball or Magic Missiles. Those are the ones that they're most likely to be compatible enough with to use the skill book. Carl joked. Most demons could use basic fire magic on their own or arcane magic in the case of the feathered descendants of the magic demon clan. But those sorts of controlled abilities normally came with system access or years of study, so if they found some young demons to test, they should be fine. I will write Rend because I don't know Cleave, and there are no more essential warrior skills than those two. If they can't learn magic, they are probably warriors anyhow. Carl added. They sat quietly across the table in the small hotel room, writing books for the next hour until a knock at the door disturbed their flow. An awakened rank satyr in a frayed and repeatedly patched robe that appeared to have been made from a flour sack bowed as he brought in trays of food, and then a pitcher of wine from a cart in the hall. Your refreshments, honored guests. He greeted them. Thank you. Before you go, I have a few questions for you. Carl replied, trying not to scare off the skittish satyr. The servant bowed. Anything you wish, Demon Lord. Dana giggled then snorted as she tried not to giggle. The power level of this place, what level are most of the species at and how are they ranked? We came from overseas and I know nothing of the region. Carl elaborated. Of course, my lord. Naturally at the bottom are the common ranked cattle and slaves. Then awakened rank indentured servants like myself serving our masters until we buy our freedom or ascend. The ascended and commanders are considered commoners here unless they're commanding a ship. Though I am told that further inland the commanders are more like knights. The inland tribes have a different way of doing things. I do hope that you prepared proper clothing if you're going to visit them. They don't wear anything that wasn't living and I don't have any idea what sort of magic you made those clothes with. The last was spoken softly and Dana laughed. They're made with bloodbath spider silk. She explained. The satyr looked horrified. What sort of monster could capture a bloodbath spider and force it to make them clothing? Even the big boss might not win a fight against one, much less force it to work for him. The satyr bowed as he retreated and Dana didn't try to stop him. They had already terrified the unfortunate man, and if he was an indentured servant of the inn, he wouldn't know much and he wouldn't benefit much from gaining a class. At least not any time soon, as satyrs had such a hard time ascending even in the Dragon Isles. Hey, I found our house, Hawk announced. We're not even from this continent. Carl reminded him. Are you sure? I just flew over the place called Bunga and the notice says that the house beneath me belongs to the Darklight host. That's definitely us. Carl couldn't argue with that. If it belonged to the Darklight host, it was their house no matter how you looked at it. The system isn't completely inactive here. Hawk just got a notice that he flew over a Darklight host guild house. Carl informed Dana. How many people live there? The city is big but the house is abandoned. It's still intact but it's all old and there is a barrier over it. Hawk informed him. Carl relayed the message then began to formulate a plan. First we find a test subject or two here, then we can move on to Bunga. If there is an unused guild house there, we have somewhere free to stay and there might be answers about what happened to the continent. He suggested. Alright, but who do we even pick? Dana asked. Carl chuckled. I say we pick the biggest goon we can find, either an orc or a wrath demon, and see if they can become a warrior. Then look for a mage of some sort or a magic demon and see if you can awaken a class for them. Should we do that tonight or in the morning? Dana asked, then gave Carl a suggestive wiggle of her eyebrows. Now, I don't want any distractions tonight and we're going to need all night for what I have planned. Dana laughed and took Carl's hand to lead him down to the tavern of the inn. Miss? The satyr who had brought them their meal whispered as they walked past him in the hall. Yes? I would suggest that you change back to fox form. You do have one, right? You smell like fox and magic, so you should be a shapeshifter. If people think you're human, they might misunderstand you as a slave in hiding and try to capture you for reward. It's better not to let anyone who has poor senses think that you might be common rank. The goat-legged demon whispered. Thank you. Where I'm from it's the fox form that gets too much attention. Dana replied. The satyr shrugged. But that's better attention than the slavers. Satyrs don't dare go outside when they're in town even if we have our certificates. It's better to pay a delivery fee than to go missing onto one of the slave boats. Dana transformed back and Carl cast Eternal Lightning Barrier over both of them. The satyr nodded happily. That's much better. Nobody will mistake you for anything but a different fox species now, and they're all powerful. Carl patted the young man on the shoulder and pressed a silver coin into his hand. Thank you for the information. If you have more helpful information for us later, feel free to pass it along. He quietly informed the little demon so that anyone nearby didn't notice and try to take the satyr's money. Chapter 1170. Backlash. Chapter 1170. Backlash. Downstairs the innkeeper greeted them with a warm smile. Demon Lord, young miss, it is good to see you again. Would you like drinks? Perhaps an evening meal? Carl nodded. The servants just brought up a meal, but both, I think. Something light to eat anyhow. Then we need you to find us a young, as in still growing but not before puberty, wrath demon or orc. One with ambition and skills. And then we will need to borrow you as well. Just for a few minutes. It will help us with our work here. Dana added. The innkeeper was from a magic demon species, so he should be suitable for most mage-type classes. I know just the one for your task. Let me send a runner. The demon motioned for the server to bring them drinks and then joined Dana and Carl at the table. What can I help you with? Questions about the continent? Dana nodded. Those as well. But first I want to know what happens when you read this book. She handed him the book of Magic Missile Volley, an improved version of Magic Missile she had gained with her new class. It was no harder to write, and logically it should be better for awakening a class, as it wasn't a basic spell that classically trained mages might know. The demon opened the book and then a pulse of black mist emerged from his body and it was knocked out of his hands. Kara leapt out of her space and onto the table to examine the strange phenomenon. She hadn't even detected the magic on him before he tried to use the book. That was new. And new was interesting. Tell him to do it again. Nullify isn't finding anything. Kara demanded. Are you all right? If you are, we would like for you to try again. Carl requested. The demon was breathing heavily, but he nodded. Just a moment that was unexpectedly painful. Carl focused on Remy's skills and created a healing totem on the table. The magical item would cleanse, purify, and heal. Perfect for unknown negative effects from an unidentified spell. The innkeeper took a slow sip of wine and then placed the cup well away from himself as he reached for the book again. This time when the black mist pulsed, Kara hit it with Nullify at the mythic rank, and a ringing noise like a hammer hitting a gong echoed through the room, along with a flash of blackness that darkened the entire room even to Carl's senses. But Kara wasn't giving up on nullifying the effect, and the darkness quickly faded. She nodded and tapped the book, which the demon picked up and carefully opened. It vanished in his hands, and the innkeeper's eyes went vacant for a moment. When they opened, they glowed blue with power, and his feathers seemed to crackle with magic. Carl smiled in victory, then inspected the man with the system interface. Name, Tantala. Rank, Commander. Class, Spellweaver. Then the letters seemed to jumble before fading from sight along with the demon's newly gained nameplate. So it's not impossible, it's being forcibly suppressed. Dana muttered. And the spell isn't on him. It's just here everywhere. See if he can use his skills. Kara requested. Can you use your new spell? Carl asked. The innkeeper nodded, then leaned forward to whisper his answer. Like you said, the legendary system is real. I saw it. I can even access class skills, but I don't have any of the points I need to buy more, he whispered. Oh, very good. So you can still use it. Carl replied quietly. The demon nodded. I can also see your names. All three of you. Yours has a strange thing around it, probably to let me know that you're a demon lord. But I can definitely see them. That meant it was suppressing both Carl and Dana's system functions, so that they couldn't see the system status of the residents. But if it wasn't stopping the innkeeper from using his class abilities, there might be much more at play here and many more system users than they thought. The problem was that nobody could tell who they were unless they spread the news themselves. And that would make it look like there were none on the continent. Carl reported that directly to Matilda but got no response, so he had to hope that the message had gone through after the troubles they had earlier. The inn's errand boy brought a hulking young orc, perhaps 15 years old, into the inn a few minutes later. You needed to see me, innkeeper? Is there work today? He asked. Carl smiled. In a way. I need you to test something for me and I will pay you to try. See, good pay. He held up a silver coin and then handed another to the innkeeper, who blinked in shock, then pocketed the money. A silver coin as a tip was probably a day's wage or more, even in foreign currency. But Carl didn't have any less valuable coins. No problem, sir. I can lift all sorts of heavy things. Or if someone has been troubling you, I can take care of them right quick. The orc agreed quickly. I need you to open this and tell me what you understand of the contents. The orc looked like he was about to say something, then reconsidered and sat down at the table. He took a pair of reading glasses out of his pocket and then flipped open the book. Kara flexed her claws, preparing for the backlash, but nothing came. The book vanished. The boy's eyes went blank for a second, and then he got a nameplate that didn't vanish immediately. Name, Boy. Rank, Commander. Class, Warrior. Your father named you Boy? Carl asked. The orc nodded. When I reach 2 meters tall, I can pick a new name for myself. Until then, I'm still a boy. That actually sounded like a very Orcish thing to do. Oh, I can use even more new skills. What are bonus points? Well, I'll figure that out later. Guard, Shield, Slam, and Cleave. Those sound like an excellent set of warrior skills, he declared. Dana gave Carl a disbelieving look. With all the options that he might have had, he picked the 3 most stereotypical warrior skills to go with. Rend. Carl handed him a single silver coin and the orc pulled him into a hug. This is the best day ever. Did you need more answers? If not, I'm going to train with the town guard. They're never going to believe how much stronger I just got. Go have fun. Just try not to hurt anyone with your new skills unless they deserve it. Carl agreed. Warriors really were born to the role. Chapter 1171. Why not him? Chapter 1171. Why not him? He has the system now too. I can see it. Can others see it? The innkeeper asked. Carl nodded. Anyone with a system assigned class should be able to see his. But for some reason yours is hidden. I think it's something to do with the backlash. But we don't know why that happened to you but not to him. Maybe because I'm a demon and he's an orc? The orcs follow any and every war and battle god they learn about, so one of them likely approves of him gaining power. That is a possibility. It looks like we just gained more questions than we answered. However, we can think about that later. Let's have a celebratory dinner first. If the silver is good here, then bring out the good rum and we can celebrate properly. Carl offered and put a few coins on the table. The innkeeper scooped them up. We take foreign silver at weight. We can't expect everyone to use our clan's coins after all. Most cities are like that. Is there no national currency? Dana asked. National currency? There aren't even reliable peace treaties between most villages, much less a unified currency. As long as your coins aren't shaved, you'll get a good price for them anywhere that you go. Carl sighed. So much has changed since I was here last. The innkeeper looked confused. How long has it been since you were here? I can't really tell your species' ages. Carl chuckled. It's been a few thousand years. Don't take it personally, there was some time traveling involved. But at the time things were fairly well organized, and they even had patrols on all the major roads hunting bandits. The demon laughed, drawing confused glances from the tired sailors and locals in the tavern. That really must have been a long time ago. We don't even say that there are bandits anymore. Just nomadic clans, which are the same thing. If you come across them, you either beat them into submission or you get robbed. The innkeeper explained. Dana sighed. We might have to fly. If you let the Carl pick fights with every group of nomadic orcs he comes across, we will never get anything done but drinking and fighting. Carl and the orcs were made for each other. An orc in the back of the room burst out laughing, and the mirth slowly spread around the room. That's why we like living in cities full of wrath demons. They just get us, you know? The orc joked. Carl chuckled and placed a few more coins on the table. Waitress, I think we need a party tonight. Let the house drink until those coins run out. The innkeeper chuckled as she pocketed one of the coins and put the other two into the safe behind the bar. It would take effort for the patrons to get through that much liquor, and it wasn't busy in here tonight. Plus, they had food coming. The tavern remained quiet for the evening, or at least the part of it that Carl and Dana were around for. Because they only made it 3 drinks past dinner before he was carrying her up the stairs to their room. Do you know what I'm thinking? Carl asked as he kicked the door closed behind them. What? That you have entirely too many clothes on. Now Carl had forgotten one essential factor before they were too distracted to worry about interference that evening. He was the one who was supposed to put up the soundproofing ward. So when they went downstairs for breakfast in the morning with Dana back in fox form, not a single patron of the inn, including the barmaid, could look them straight in the eye without blushing. Will you be staying for another night? The morning shift barmaid asked. Carl shook his head. No, we have business in Bunga, so we will be heading out after breakfast. Give my compliments to the chef, this morning's bread is incredible. I hadn't expected to be so hungry, but I've got quite the appetite this morning. The waitress turned away, muttering something that sounded like "Goddess, give me strength." And Dana frowned at Carl in confusion. But whatever the waitress was on about wasn't enough to concern her. They were going to leave the city in just a few minutes, and she would convince Carl to transform back into a dragon, so that they didn't have to walk the entire distance or ride a golem. They made their way through the streets after breakfast, as Carl didn't want to transform in the middle of town and freak everyone out. Hawk was circling overhead, napping as he floated on the air currents. Carl sent a mental poke to wake him up and then transformed to let Dana hop on his back. Fuck me, that's a big dragon. The gate guard muttered. You're not joking. Only something that scary could think that a cat demon transformation is a less threatening public face to put on. The demon on the other side of the gate agreed. Do you think that he might actually be totem ranked? I've never seen a dragon that size before. The first guard asked. At least totem. He smacked around the boss when he arrived just for the sake of a good fight. No overlord is doing that. Freak them out a little. Dana joked as Carl prepared to leap into the air. Behemoth and brutality combined to nearly triple Carl's size, bringing his dragon form from just over 20 meters long to 60. Trees bowed under the force of the wind as he spread his wings and hurled his massive body into the air. Fortunately, Kara granted them agile flyer, or Carl was certain that a dragon this large would need half a country just to turn around at cruising speed. Once they were up above the clouds, Carl returned his size to normal and joined Hawk on their way east to Bunga. First order of business? Find out what happened when he visited the abandoned guildhouse. Chapter 1172. Return to Bunga. It was under 200 kilometers to Bunga, not even 2 hours of flight time, even though they detoured once because Hawk thought that he saw giant mice, which turned out to be an oddly shaped species of sheep. Hawk returned to his space this time, and Carl landed within sight of the walls so that the guards could see him transform and escort Dana to the gates. The gate guards bowed politely as they approached and motioned for them to place their hand on a round plinth. Please attempt to activate the plinth and then place any weapons you are carrying into storage. The guard declared in the bored tone of wage workers everywhere. Dana put her blades into her inventory, then placed her hand on the plinth and shrugged as nothing happened. Carl wasn't wearing anything but slacks and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, so he just placed his hand on the plinth and inserted some mana. Welcome back, former city lord. City functions initializing. Please wait. The guards were about to motion them into the city, then they noticed the glowing words on the surface of the plinth. Former city lord? I think we need a supervisor. Definitely a supervisor. Maybe the captain. The captain will know what to do when something actually happens. The guard stammered. Dana silently stared at Carl, who only shrugged in response. How was I supposed to know that worn stone plinth was the city stone? It didn't look like that the last time I was here. At least I'm pretty sure it didn't. But maybe we will get answers about what has gone wrong with the activations here. So it's a win, right? He asked. A win for sure until the point where some mythic warrior with a grudge comes out with a sword in his hand. Dana reminded him. Part of the last time that happened was because you're just too sexy. Carl corrected. The Bunga city guards stared at this odd couple. They were clearly powerful, but they might be a bit crazy. The monster man was definitely not normal. But that was common with ancient dragons. Carl wrapped an arm around Dana's waist and lifted her up to sit on his hip. The mage rolled her eyes at him and whispered in his ear. Do you think that it makes you look less threatening to have a cute fox in your arms? Can't hurt, right? The guards had a very different take on the situation. They weren't sure if the dragon in cat demon form considered the divine fox girl to be his wife or his pet. But the plinth called him a former city lord. But the plinth had been inactive for over 6,000 years. So he had to have been the city lord at some point before that. Also, it looked like they were both wearing demonic spider silk of overlord or higher quality. The guards could feel the magic radiating from the pair, and they weren't even casting any spells. It had to be entirely their outfits. Carl inspected the guards, who were wearing leather armor and holding spears with sharpened bone tips. They were telling the truth in capture. These people really did only use products that used to be alive. There was no metal armor or weaponry to be found. A large orc rushed out of the gates and then stopped when he saw Carl. I will be back. Then he turned and ran back into the city. The guards turned to each other looking for answers, but nobody had any idea what was going on. Then the guard captain came back out with a perplexed and terrified Teen Bunnykin on his hip, the same way that Carl was carrying Dana. Carl laughed. I must say your choice is adorable. But I wasn't trying to start a contest, I just wanted to hold my wife while I waited. So I can put the bunny down? The guard captain asked reluctantly. If you want to. The orc thought about it, then decided to keep the bunny. Might I ask, how did you activate the stone? He asked. I just placed my hand on it and gave it a bit of mana. Once upon a time I was the city lord of Bunga, and the stone remembered even after all this time. If I'm not mistaken, I've even got a guild house here in the city that is still partially intact. The Darklight Host Guild House. Carl replied. I don't know that name. But there are some ancient and haunted tombs. You might mean one of them. Why don't I lead you inside and we can go see the Bunga tribe's chieftain? The guard captain suggested. That works for me. Why don't we let the ladies walk together? Carl agreed. The guard captain nodded and set the bunny down when Carl stepped beside him. Carl put Dana down and she shrugged as the increasingly confused bunny took her hand. She was just the cleaner. She had no idea why she was dragged out of the barracks and presented to some strangers like a trophy. She had realized right away that the big guy and the fox were just flirting, but the guard captain wasn't a bright man. A great fighter, yes. But not a smart man. Even for the notoriously brutish orcs. But now she was on an adventure with the pretty lady who smelled like magic and some sort of herbal soap. It was a good smell, and she wondered where she could get some. Dana brought out a bag of cookies as they followed the men through the city. So what is it like living in Bunga? We came from another continent to investigate something for the Dragon Church. Dana asked quietly. Bunga isn't bad. They treat bunnies better than most places. Bunga is mostly trolls and orcs, but there are some beastkin as well. Not many powerful ones, but that's all right. Trolls are messy though. It makes my job hard. The bunny explained. Dana chuckled and passed the bunny a cookie. This could take a while. We're almost at the Darklight Host Guild House, and the Carl is going to want to go inside and look around. That is never fast. As long as they don't add it to my cleaning rotation. That place gives me the creeps. Chapter 1173. Abandoned Guild House. Carl stepped up to the barrier around the dilapidated stone building and raised his hand to inspect the surface. It wasn't a barrier spell that he was familiar with, but it was most likely cast by Orthos before he left. The question was if Carl could enter without damaging it. The spell had held the house in something close to stasis for thousands of years, and Carl didn't want to do anything that would destroy the historical artifact. Even from here he could see dwarven runes carved into the stone, long since inert but undamaged by time. If he could spot some of the building's defensive measures already, there had to be more. And if there were more, most of them would be considered lost arts by now. At least by most people. Are you sure that's wise, sir? The Bunga city guard asked cautiously as Carl's hand touched the barrier. No worries, the house still belongs to the guild. It won't harm me. I'm more worried about damaging it when I enter if it was intended to be a stasis spell to preserve the house. So I'm trying to determine what it does first. The guard nodded slowly as Carl analyzed the barrier, and then tried to use his limited understanding of the fundamental rule of mana manipulation to trace the spell to its origin. The spell stones were overgrown with grass buried under a few centimeters of dirt and plant roots by the ages. But with mana flowing through them, they were easy enough to understand. It was a preservation spell, the same sort that he had cast on the pantry, though written by a mage and not a runecrafter, so the spell was somewhat different. That meant all it was doing was slowing the aging of the building and keeping unauthorized people out. That was a feature that the pantry didn't have, but he could see the value if he was making a copy for someone like Dave, who had a whole house full of curious badger children to keep away from snacks and cleaning supplies. There wasn't anyone in the Alliance house or Guild house that wasn't allowed to access the food as they pleased, so Carl hadn't thought of it before seeing it in action. Tentatively, Carl took a step forward, and the barrier offered no resistance to him as he stepped onto the overgrown walkway and headed for the building. Dana followed him into the yard, but the guard simply ran into the barrier as if he had walked into a wall. Just wait there for a few moments while we make sure that the building is safe to enter, Carl instructed, with no intentions of letting strangers into this relic of a house. That should be a preservation barrier, right? What happened to this place? Dana asked as she looked around the yard. If the spell functions the same as the one that I placed on the pantry, it only slows decay to 1% of its original rate. It doesn't stop it completely. That would be much more difficult without an affinity for time magic. So a cake in the cupboard reaches day-old status after 3 months. But this place has been abandoned for thousands of years. Even with the barrier, it has essentially gone decades without maintenance. That's why the stones are all still perfect, but the yard is a mess and the paint has peeled. I don't know how well the building was made to begin with. I didn't really inspect it last time I was here. But it should be solid enough to enter, Carl explained. The front door was open with another barrier over it to keep out both strangers and the elements going by the leaves that had been piled against it by the wind. Carl stepped over them and into the house, which looked faded and dusty but still intact. When the previous residents of the guild house had left, they had taken most of the furniture. Carl could see the spots along the wall where large pieces had once stood and the divots in the floor where something on rollers, likely a grand piano, had once stood. But in the dining room, the massive ironwood table remained with one single chair and a carved stone tablet. To whomever should find this tablet. My name is Orthos Bronze Dragon of the Order, last living member of the Darklight host in Bunga, and one of the few to still have any system functions on this continent. If the house still stands and the system resurgence has begun, please proceed to the basement and touch the guild stone to activate the branch house functions. If I still live, I should feel it. If the spells have failed and the house is being visited by looters and not guild members, I ask that you not damage the relics left behind when you take them. In time, they will be immeasurably valuable. Destroying them for sport would deny your family the chance at unfathomable wealth in the next generation. Carl and Dana both smiled at the matter-of-fact message left by the bronze dragon. Should we go bother the old man? Carl asked. Oh, most definitely. If we didn't, I suspect that Kara would. Dana laughed. In her space, Kara nodded eagerly. She liked that dragon. He was fun to tease. Kara exited her space to lead the way down the stairs, following instinct to the guild stones. Guild branch leader Carl has reactivated the Darklight host guild branch at Bunga. Branch members 1. Issue call to gather. Portal open. Carl sighed as he saw the list of system notices after Kara reached the system stones. The system letting her operate things on his behalf was somewhat problematic. Mostly just because Kara was Kara. If it was Thor who had learned that trick, Carl would have been much less concerned. What the hey? I was teaching a class. Where are you dragging me, you damnable badger? Don't think I forgot about the footprints on my ceiling. Orthos was complaining. It looks like you're still best friends. Dana laughed as she entered the open stone basement and found the dragon facing off against the Chaos Badger. Orthos glared at her and Carl began to explain. Lady Matilda asked us to find out why nobody on this continent is getting the system, and this is where we started. We saw that the system still listed the house as belonging to the guild but inactive. So we reactivated it to see if the system started to come back online. Orthos tapped his chin. Did the old woman forget about the suppression? What suppression? Carl asked. Oh, at the end of the last resurgence, the Titans and Giants allied to cast a suppression barrier over the continent. It's supposed to prevent anyone from advancing a magical device that the immortal realms use to keep slaves in line. That's the most likely cause for the situation here. Did you promise her that you would fix it or just find out the reason for the issue? Orthos asked. Dana smirked and shook her head. Neither really. She insisted and then sent us here. You know how she is. Chapter 1174. Bunga Guild Branch. Orthos sighed, then looked around the basement with a sense of nostalgia. Well, give me a moment to get my things and I will analyze the situation here. If nothing else, I should be able to pinpoint the origin of any curses, spells, or other effects that are preventing the continent from regaining system access. Kara flapped her wings and flew back through the portal, making sure that the dragon wasn't going to run away on her. Making friends, are you? Carl asked as Kara followed Orthos around the beast god temple. Yep. He's so organized. It's like dangling candy in front of Lotus or mice in front of Hawk. I just can't resist messing with him. The badger agreed. Carl chuckled. Badgers and bronze dragons were polar opposites, order and chaos. It really wasn't surprising that the Chaos faction saw the disciples of the God of Law and Order as the perfect playmates. They were guaranteed a response to every prank. Only a few minutes later the pair were back and Kara let the portal close behind them. Alright, where should we start? Let's begin with the suppression, as I can still feel it weighing on me. But it's not the same, just a similar effect to what was used before. The original suppression artifact was created and used by an immortal rank Titan. That Titan no longer exists. Matilda ate him. But the effect is still in place, so I suspect that either someone found the device that he used or that another immortal managed to break through from their realm and put a restriction on the continent so they could harvest it later without risking any of the residents outgrowing the roles it had chosen for them. Have you tried to assign classes to anyone? I heard you have a knack for that, Orthos asked. Carl nodded. 2 of them so far. The attempt to awaken a mage met with intense backlash that Kara had to nullify at the mythic rank multiple times. But the attempt to awaken a warrior didn't give us any trouble. Orthos tapped his chin as he thought and tried to ignore the way that Kara twined between his feet like a cat. He would deal with the badger fur on his socks later. I get it. I know what the issue is. It's not targeting the system at all. If it was used by an immortal from this planet, they would have. As it's the greatest imbalance to the power structure. Instead of the system, it is suppressing magic, which is traditionally the only way that most species can reach immortality. I believe that one or more of the gateways between the realms have failed or are being overpowered by something stronger than Matilda. The immortals on the other side either linked the gateway to one of their slave pens or they are casting the spell through as a way to keep the mortals here weakened so that they have time to deal with the problem later. The dragon insisted. So we just need to find the source of the problem and then close the gateway or deactivate the item that is causing the problem. Carl asked. Orthos nodded. If we stop the feed for the effect, it will begin to fade. It's not instant. The immortals solved that vulnerability eons ago. But without anything feeding the effect, it shouldn't be more than a few years before classes other than warrior start to awaken. Dana held up her hand. Wait, the Dragon Isles are massively overpopulated with warriors, especially in the northeast. Could that be related? Orthos thought about it, then shook his head. No, I think that's mostly just because the whole region is filled with brutish louts. The geography doesn't match. The southwestern islands are closest to this continent, so they should be the most affected if that was the case. But there is a possibility that the whole world is suffering from it to some degree, especially if the user on the other side is a legend or a demigod. He informed them with a sigh. What are the chances that we can actually do something about it? Carl asked. Very good. Matilda hasn't let an intruder onto this world in ages. If she's blocked the weak point, the 4 of us should be enough to completely seal it. I don't think that an immortal would put an item that valuable in our world, but if they did, that would be even easier. You see, I know the trick to opening portals between planes, and we could just make it someone else's problem. Orthos explained. Kara gave him 2 thumbs up, and the dragon immediately began to work on another plan. The plan that the Chaos Badger approved of would be Plan B. Now that the guild house is back online, would you like to take a look around, or should we go straight to problem solving? Dana asked. Orthos waved his hand dismissively. I have all the time in the world to sort out this mess. Plus, there are no other guild members here, and I likely can't recruit them until years from now when they actually have a system interface. So we can solve the issue now, and then I will come back and deal with guild matters. Matilda is already sending me welcome back messages. That made Dana giggle. It was no secret that Orthos was one of the few dragons old enough to relate to her in some way. But Matilda's daily activity rate had gone way up from her usual slumbering state once the Drod Guild branch had been activated, and even more in the last few weeks with the wedding plans. Soon the supreme-ranked Chaos Dragon wouldn't be known as a hibernating threat but as an active participant in the life of the Dragon Isles. Before we leave the city, we should likely trim the yard and say hello to the current lord. Who even leads this place nowadays? Orthos asked. The Bunga clan does. The continent has somehow managed to devolve into disassociated barbarian clans running cities or living nomadic lives in the wilderness. Carl explained. Orthos sighed. Are the city stones at least still active? The air here smells terrible, and not in the stale pantry way. Dana giggled and Carl smiled. In fact, they are. They placed the plinth at the main gate to help vet visitors. You can check in and bring whatever functions you would like online. I can offer you some mana storage if you need it in place of the guild members who would normally help. That would be much appreciated. I can't stand a disorganized city. Chapter 1175. Welcome home, Orthos. When they walked out of the house with one more person, the city guard was completely baffled. Had there been someone living in there this whole time? But the house was beginning to repair itself, and magical blades were trimming the yard and moving the mulch to a compost pile. If this new person had lived here the entire time, he would have done that more than once in the last 1,000 years, right? Carl nodded at the guard. We need to go back to the gate for a moment. Our new arrival needs to activate the city stones. Oh, certainly. It's not far. Please follow me. It was easier not to argue with Carl, and it was city policy that everyone checked in by touching the stones. Kara nearly tripped Orthos a dozen times as she ran in circles around the group, becoming increasingly excited with every step. Why did the stone have to be so far from the house? This was going to be glorious. Orthos didn't understand her enthusiasm. If he activated the city stones, he would bring order to the city, not chaos. The guard led them to the gates and Orthos sighed as he saw the damaged and worn state of the city stone. Welcome, City Lord Orthos. City functions now online. Ending hibernation mode. All functions operational. The heavily worn plinth regrew atop platform covered in gems and writing, and Orthos nodded happily. Ah, that is better. Now, Lord Carl, could you spare me just a bit of mana to bring essential services online? Orthos asked. Carl nodded and placed a hand on the bronze dragon's shoulder to pass mana directly to him. Orthos radiated power as he began to work, and a barrier formed over the whole city. Then it began sending pillars of light toward the ground all over Bunga as the mana draw reached the maximum constant mana flow for an overlord-ranked dragon. At the end of the road in front of them, right in the middle of the city, the ruins of the city hall began to rebuild themselves, and Carl saw golems or perhaps gargoyles in police uniforms appearing all over the concourse. Don't forget to match the new fashion sensibility. They only wear and use things that were living, no metal. Carl reminded the dragon with a system message. Orthos nodded, and the guards changed from polished brass buttons on military coats to burly dragonkin warriors in leather pants with scales and tattoos on bare chests. Dana gave the dragon a curious look, and he shrugged. They're still impressive, right? If I can't have the cool ones, I will at least make the ones the ladies like. He wasn't joking. He had made hundreds of overlord-ranked security guard gargoyles with magical stone battle axes, and the ladies of Bunga were already ogling them as they introduced themselves and handed out flyers with basic city rules on them. Do you think that we should wait here for the clan chief? Or should we go to him? Carl asked the stunned security guards as Orthos continued to work. I am not sure. I think if we wait here, the clan chief will come to us. There is no way that he can miss that giant stone building appearing in the park, especially since it's in his back garden. But I will send someone to tell him what is going on. What else is he planning to do? The guard replied. Orthos shrugged. I remade the city guard, I made new sanitation wagons, and I refreshed the self-repair charm on the city walls after I rebuilt the city hall. Other than that, I left things as they were. The guards aren't setting any new rules right now, just handing out flyers with information about what rules they will enforce. The guards winced. That was definitely not going to make the clan chief happy. His enforcers set the rules based on their mood, and most of them were not overlords. The runner from the guard station at the wall didn't have to make it all the way to the center of the city. The clan chief was already coming their way in full battle armor with a retinue of guards. Looks like you're about to gain new responsibilities. Carl joked with Orthos. Old ones, really. But as a bronze dragon, I can't just let them continue going on like savages. He sighed. Then his aura pulsed with power, and Carl realized that the dragon was advancing. He had been overlord for a long time, bottlenecked by the restricted energy levels of the other continent. But here that wasn't a problem, and he had just done something that greatly pleased his god. Guard, explain. The clan chief shouted as he reached the gates. Sir, the dragons of the Darklight host have returned, and they activated the plinth. This is former City Lord Carl and City Lord Orthos. The guard informed him. What is he doing to my city? The clan chief demanded. Orthos sighed in relief as he finished all of what he considered the basic work around the city. I brought back the necessities of a basic and functional society. How did you manage to let the city degrade so far that not even the running water was functional anymore? No, forget that. How did you let things get so bad that people were dumping their household waste in the gutters? That's just uncivilized. So I fixed the basic services, and over the next week the city will undergo a thorough cleansing. I do have a few things to take care of, but I am not sure that you can be trusted to not screw it all up in my absence. Orthos explained. The worst part was that he didn't even see it as an insult, just basic questions and a statement of fact. The beast god temples were full of what the people here would consider wild animals, and they were still more sanitary than the people of the Bunga clan. Chapter 1176. Does not compute. For a moment the clan chief didn't seem to know what to say. He had been insulted many ways by many different people. But the pure audacity of this dragon to tell him that his people lived like savages when wild dragons roamed the continent killing and burning as they pleased was beyond words. What rules are you trying to enforce on my clan? The chief demanded, losing patience with Orthos. The bronze dragon sighed. Just the essentials of civilized society, as I see that your clan has devolved somewhat since I departed a few thousand years ago. My guards will enforce the laws against theft and prevent violence against others wherever they see it. That is all. For now. However, there are other aspects of the city that will require attention and maintenance. For example, I fixed the running water situation, but I see that none of the new homes have been built with access to the lines. At least the public fountains are flowing now. Also, the sewer lines are repaired so liquid waste dumped in the street like primitives discovering a lost civilization will flow out of the city. I will have the sanitation wagons clear the solid debris from the street to be disposed of in the incinerator. We can discuss educating the people about the newly placed rubbish bins later. This whole place needs cleaning, so I will return here once we have discovered the source of the disturbance that is limiting the system's activation and resume my role as city lord. The clan chief roared and charged at Orthos with a spiked club in his hand, but the bronze dragon simply transformed and stomped on him, smashing the man into the ground as he glowed with divine light. Dealing with lawbreakers and troublemakers was the domain of his god, and Orthos was not going to lose a challenge for his city before he even had a chance to clean it or restore order and the rule of law. The clan chief looked baffled as he flailed under Orthos' claw. He had been defeated with a single strike, and the dragon didn't even have to try to keep him pinned down. Was this the physical advantage between dragons and the rest of the world? Perhaps we should continue the search on our own? Your city has a lot of renovations to do, and the Bunga Guildhouse probably needs a good cleaning before you start to recruit new members. It's been a few thousand years since the Darklight host last ruled the city of Bunga, and they do look like they could use a bit of guidance. Carl suggested. Orthos rumbled in annoyance, then nodded and dropped an item from his inventory at Carl's feet. You can use that to find anomalies. One of them must be the source of the problem, so just follow the disruption toward its strongest point, then use that to pinpoint the issue. But you should at least rest here for one night first. It's still early, but there are no other cities in easy walking distance. Or were you planning to fly? Orthos asked. I was going to fly, but an overnight stay doesn't seem too bad. Why don't you start on educating the clan chief about his responsibilities while I inform the people of the changes that have been made? Carl suggested. Orthos transformed back into the unassuming old cleric he had arrived looking like, and then picked up the Bunga clan chief. Now let's head for City Hall, and I can fill you in on some of the changes that will be happening here. I am not interested in replacing the Bunga clan, only in keeping order within the city. Oh, don't look at me like that. Have you ever seen a feral bronze dragon? No, it doesn't happen to us. Now get to walking, I have a schedule to keep. Orthos lectured the sullen clan chief. As they walked away, the gate guard turned to Carl. Is he always like that? Carl shook his head. No, he just has zero patience for stupidity and disorder. He spent over 1,000 years educating preschool-age divine beasts, and I suspect that he views the people of Bunga as being at about the same level of civility. But I might as well start my work here. Can you call out all the guards in this zone? I will explain the changes now so that you don't anger Orthos and make him call for assistance from the church. That would be the beast god's church most likely. And being lectured in basic civility by a bunch of intelligent beasts probably wouldn't improve the mood of any of the residents of the city. The guard who had been manning the plinth blew a series of notes on a whistle hung around his neck, and the guards began to gather. The man nodded, then went to lean on the plinth and almost fell over when he realized it wasn't there anymore. Orthos must have put it back in the control room in City Hall. That would be the rebuilt building in the middle of the city. But we will start with the essentials. The defenses of the city have been partially restored, so you will be safer from outside attacks. The ancient fountains in the city have all been reconstructed, and they flow with fresh drinkable water. That water will continue to flow for as long as Orthos is in control of the city. The street drains and the septic lines in any relic houses are now repaired, so waste will flow out of the city. The newly constructed city guard will maintain order, but Orthos has limited their enforcement so that they're not too busy. I will say that he doesn't have high expectations for the Bunga clan, but after seeing the conditions in capture, I can assure you that there will be some adjustments to be made. Now who has questions? Carl explained to the gathered guards. An elderly wrath demon stepped forward to speak. I have a few. Is it true that the new guards don't allow fighting? Carl immediately understood the issue. Not as a blanket ban on violence. They will only stop violent crime and attacks. If you both want to fight, that is fine. But if you sucker punch someone who doesn't want to fight or try to rob them, then they will get involved. The demon smiled in satisfaction. At least the new changes wouldn't change the dominance fights. But one of the orcs had a more practical concern. What happens when traveling merchants come through with slave caravans? That was definitely not going to end well. Chapter 1177. That might be an issue. That was an excellent question. What would happen if someone brought slaves into the city? The practice had been outlawed the last time that Carl had been here, and the city had sent out guards to hunt the pirates who were still capturing slaves for export. I would recommend that they not come into the city. During the last system resurgence, the practice had been outlawed. If they show up, I can't guarantee that the city guard won't free any slave that requests it. Carl explained. The orc chuckled. Oh, this is going to be fun. Bunga clan doesn't allow slaves in the city, but the chief lets you buy from the caravans as long as you free them after you pay. They capture many children from the nomadic tribes, and some make good fighters. A sturdy troll beside him with skin like drying mud cracked and mottled rumbled happily. Maybe the new city lord will let us hunt slavers? They taste good. Dana laughed and Carl nodded. You should discuss that with the clan chief. I know that Orthos would let you, but his job is more to provide the rules that keep the city running while the clan chief sets the rules for his tribesmen. The troll nodded. I will inform the other trolls. Swamp trolls like the taste of merchants best, but some of the others don't like what they do. Big demons and orcs will come with us for sure. Any chance to smash thieves? The orcs in the crowd simply shrugged. The troll might not be a bright man, but he knew what he was talking about. They did love a good fight, and it wasn't a stretch to consider captured nomads as stolen goods. So we don't need to start doing anything new, only keeping the city in order and explaining the new features to people so they don't make a mess? A lanky blue-skinned troll asked. Carl nodded. Exactly. Until the big bosses give different orders, all you have to do is keep the city in order. Don't let the brawls break vendor stalls or houses. Teach everyone not to make the city more filthy than it has to be. It will also help reduce disease in the city. Not that trolls usually have to worry about that with your regeneration. But for everyone else that is a good thing. Also, Orthos can heal, so he might set up some sort of hospital. The guards looked lost. A hospital is a place where healers gather so that everyone knows where to find them. Now they understood. Civilizing these people up to an acceptable standard was going to drive Orthos insane. Carl was certain of it. But he could probably make a few changes that would improve the city for everyone. For example, healing totem runes engraved on the public fountains would affect everyone who came for a drink or for water to bring home. That would be an immediate improvement, and it wasn't hard to make them self-powered. I will take my wife and go spread the word through the city while I make a few upgrades. Did you need anything else to do your jobs? Carl asked. The guards shook their heads and Carl took a small statue out of his inventory. It wasn't really intended as a healing totem, it was one of the decorative statues that the sculptors had been making as home decor. But it would do the job even if it was shaped like a 10-centimeter tall dwarf. It had a large base on it, so it wasn't easily knocked over, and Carl needed every part of that to carve the healing totem spell on. He only empowered it to the royal rank enough for common issues and then looked for somewhere to put it. The old wooden building that had been at the gate when he was first here was long vanished, but the stone guard barracks inside the wall were still present and in use. I need you to place this somewhere near the gate so the effect spreads past the doors to reach travelers as they're being questioned. Carl informed the gathered guards, who were all intently watching him work. What does it do? The swamp troll asked. It's a healing totem. Cures basic diseases and heals injuries. The troll nodded and then took the statue in his thick fingers. A tendril of mud extended out and the statue was placed through a hole above the portcullis. We don't use the murder holes often. It will be good there, the troll explained. Even if they were using the hole, there was a small room up there and the statue could remain until they were under siege and didn't want to heal the enemy troops at the gate. So people just need to walk out and then back in to heal? One of the wrath demons asked. They just have to stand nearby. I am planning to put more of them at the water fountains. The demon tapped his horn with a claw as he thought. Yeah, that's a good spot. Put them at the big house too. Everyone goes to the boss when there are problems. Carl nodded. That won't be a problem. I will make sure that there are enough spots to go and heal. If my memory is right, the taverns and the market are both near fountains, and that's where most fights and challenges happen, so you can heal right up after. You know, in case you need a rematch or want to do a best 2 of 3. Then at the big house so that you go to see the boss looking and feeling your best. The orcs and wrath demons laughed. Best 2 of 3 format bar fights was an absolutely brilliant idea. Perhaps these strange foreigners weren't so bad after all. The guards whistled again and more men came out of the barracks and the closer portions of the city to be informed of the changes by the guards on gate duty. Well, some of the details. Fresh water at all the fountains and the big foreigner taking his wife to make healing spots around the city so they could fight multiple rounds in the same day were the only parts that the guards actually remembered. Carl was beginning to wonder if their intelligence had devolved with their cultural level. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.